What's up, sports fans? On today's show, we have Jeff Duncan, columnist for the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. Jeff previously worked at The Athletic and the Times-Picayune, where he was a member of a team that won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for the paper's coverage of Hurricane Katrina. He's been honored 4 times as the Columnist of the Year and 4 times for Story of the Year by the Louisiana Sports Writers Association. He is the author of 3 books on the New Orleans Saints: Payton Brees, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history, Tales from the Saints Sideline, and From Bags to Riches. He is one of 48 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee. This podcast is brought to you by DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of Boot Crew Media. Go to DraftKings and use the code BOOT. Download the app. Use the code BOOT. Make a bet for $5 and get $150 of free play. This is Talk Culotta, where we talk a lot of sports, and we're going to get started in 3, 2, 1.
At Bear Law LLC, we have the privilege of representing victims and survivors that are oftentimes involved in catastrophic incidents that affect their lives.
If anyone looking for a personal and loving relationship with law, I would choose Bear Law.
At Bear Law, our goal is to turn victims into victors.
Welcome to the show, Jeff Duncan. How you doing, my friend?
Jack, I'm doing great, man. Jazz Fest season. We just got through the draft. It's always a great time of year to be in New Orleans.
Absolutely. Just first, a little bit about you. I like to focus on not only the heroes and the athletes that we admire, but also those who tell their stories. Just break down for me, if you could, your time in New Orleans and the different careers you've had, the different, companies that you've worked for, but now you're back in full swing with NOLA.com, and also work as a contributor for, a bunch of different people, but particularly Fox 8. Just the last kind of 5 years for you in the journalism world. Talk about that for me.
Well, look, man, I'm in year 22, I think, in New Orleans. So I'm still trying to achieve New Orleanian status. It takes a little while, even though I feel like I'm a born and raised here. I love the city so much. It's such a great place to work for people in our business. I think you would agree. We punch above our weight class in the sports world. Even though we're not a huge market, I think we feel like very much a major league market, with just like the Final Four being here recently, Super Bowls, the Sugar Bowl. This is just an incredible place to work in the sports journalism business. I'm thrilled to be back at the Times-Picayune. I didn't know how much I missed it, Jack, until I left and came back and just saw the reaction from readers and people out in the community. It still resonates here. We're still very much a cherished institution, and so it's nice to have that connection with your readers. I love my time at The Athletic. I was there a couple of years, worked with a lot of great friends that I used to work with at the Times-Picayune. Still subscribe to it, love it, but very happy to be back here on a local daily basis at the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com.
Love that. And I give you the adopted son of New Orleans title.
Thanks.
We can call you born and raised, my friend. We can call you that. Jeff, what's on the Duncan docket this week? Give us a breakdown of the things you're covering. Maybe from last week. I saw you at the Zurich Classic. Doing a story on Billy Horschel and Sam Burns. Just what's on the Jeff Duncan docket, from this past week leading into this week?
Well, I'm doing a follow-up on the draft, working with my colleagues to do a roundtable. This is the kind of period of time, Jack, where we're through with a lot of the player procurement off-season phase. Yep. So really, this is pretty much the roster they're going to take. I mean, give or take another signing or two, this is going to be the 2022 Saints. So it's kind of a good time to take inventory of where they stand, where we think they stack up in the NFC. I think this is a very mysterious Saints team. So it's I'll be interested to see what my colleagues think of the roster and the team going forward. I've got, being a Louisville native, I grew up in Kentucky. Our Super Bowl, our Mardi Gras is this weekend with the Kentucky Derby. So I'm going to be writing a column about that. And actually, there's a great New Orleans connection because one of the favorites, Epicenter, was the Louisiana Derby champion. And we haven't had a Louisiana Derby champion win the Kentucky Derby since Grindstone, I think in 1996. So it's been a long time. So I'm going to write from a kind of a New Orleans angle on, hey, is this finally the time where we get a Louisiana champion in Louisville for the Run for the Roses? So I'm looking forward to that. Talk to a lot of experts in the betting field, the handicapping field, to get their picks on the race. It's always kind of a fun race, even for people that don't bet. They like watching the Derby. So we'll have some experts handicapping selections for the race as well. And then I'm also working on a book project, which has just been announced with Steve Gleason, of course, the former Saints special teams star and kind of local icon. And so we're getting the early, some of the early writing process planning down with Steve and I. So kind of have two parallel tracks here, one on the book project and one on my Times-Picayune job.
Looking forward to that. And I know you mentioned betting and horses. Do you try to stay away from gambling yourself and just talk about, the picks and the people that you have who do like to give you some betting advices? No,
I will definitely bet on horse racing.
Okay.
I grew up doing it. I mean, when I went to the University of Louisville, Jack, and the track is Churchill Downs is it's less than a mile away from the University of Louisville campus. And it was a commuter school. So when we went to classes, say you had morning classes and then you didn't have another class maybe till 2 that afternoon, we would go to Churchill Downs and hang out, all my buddies. We'd take our laptops, do our work there while the races were going on, eat lunch, and then go back over to the campus to go to our afternoon classes. It's ingrained in the society there. So I grew up doing it, especially on a big weekend like the Derby.
Right. I'm sure you were throwing down a ton of money on your college budget back then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The money we should not have been spending, and we weren't paying for our lunches very often back then.
Yeah. Well, the Saints signed Tyrann Mathieu. Honey Badger is coming home, and Nick Underhill tweeted that he was actually going to be in New Orleans today. One thing that is a cool connection that I have with you, Jeff, is the first Jeff Duncan book, first real sports book that I ever dove into was From Bags to Riches. And the follow-up title, the subtitle there is How the New Orleans Saints and the People of Their Hometown Rose from the Depths Together. Tyrann Mathieu definitely has one of those stories of rising from the depths. All the things that he's overcome from the time that he was an absolute LSU icon, when the Honey Badger name came about, to going through some rough patches, bouncing around from a couple teams, then winning a Super Bowl with the did he win a Super Bowl with the Chiefs?
Yes.
Yeah. And just obviously ending up here in New Orleans. Just talk about from a columnist perspective, how great of a story that is, and how you feel in particular about having him back in New Orleans.
Well, he's a great example of a couple of things, Jack. I think he really reflects the city of New Orleans in so many ways, kind of embodies a lot of the great personality characteristics of the people of New Orleans. He's a very resilient guy, very passionate guy. He's a classic New Orleanian in every way. There's a lot of extremes with Tyrann Mathieu, up and down. But I think he's also a lesson that I learned a long time ago covering sports. Sometimes we forget, these guys, these athletes, we tend to look at them as these superheroes, and, they're people first and foremost. Incredible athletes, obviously incredibly driven, motivated people. But also, a lot of these athletes are very young, and they come into the league, and I have to remind myself a lot, especially as I've gotten older, just how young they are, and they're not fully formed, right? They're maturing as they go. A lot of things thrown at guys at a very young age that we are not, subject to. And I think Tyrann Mathieu is a great example of a guy who's matured, who's grown as a human being, and now is an incredible leader on and off the field, and someone that we should all, I think, admire. because, as you said, he's gone through some dark tunnels in his life and come out the other side a better man, a better father and husband. And I think he's going to be a great resource for the young players in the Saints secondary, much the way Malcolm Jenkins was the last couple of years. And I think he's still got some great ball left in him. I think it was a terrific addition for the Saints.
No question. Do we know for sure if he's gonna get 32 or 7?
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet. I mean, I can't imagine Taysom Hill giving that up, considering what it means. I wrote about that way back when, and it still was difficult for him to talk about. I mean, Taysom's older brother was his idol and was a terrific football player himself. So I don't even know if Tyrann Mathieu would want the number, considering that. So I think that we'll have to see how that plays out.
Could you remind everybody the meaning behind, the number 7 for Taysom Hill?
Yeah, his older brother, I'm blanking on his name. I think his name might have been Derek, but I could be wrong there. Older brother was a college quarterback, played, I think, at some lower, like kind of smaller colleges out in Utah, and unfortunately battled addiction most of his life and ended up dying from it, and devastated the whole Hill family, especially Taysom, who looked up to his older brother and kind of followed in his footsteps. And so he's dedicated he's honored his older brother by wearing the number 7, which is what he wore in his college and high school career. Right. So, it's a little more to it than just your average jersey number selection.
Yeah, and I think 32 still looks pretty badass on Honey Badger. So excited about that. What does you mentioned earlier, Jeff, that, this is kind of the roster that we got. We're not really expecting or I guess my question is, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, are you not really expecting any more big moves? I know obviously Saints fans, are being a little greedy. We want a lot of Saints fans wanted Chris Olave. We got Chris Olave. We traded up for him. We got our offensive tackle in Trevor Penning, and now we got Honey Badger. And Saints fans, and Saints Twitter at least wants to be. We want one more. We want. There's conversations about Jarvis Landry and those types. Are you expecting any other big announcements, or do you kind of go back to what you originally said, which is this is the roster that we're going to be working with through training camp in the preseason?
No, I think they could add to it. I don't think it'll be many more players, put it that way. And I know they had conversations with Jarvis Landry, just as they did with Tyrann Mathieu, and they were pretty far apart in terms of expectations on salary. But I think there's still mutual interest, and it would not surprise me at all to see them work out a deal eventually. But he's got, I think, a little more they've got a little more competition for Jarvis Landry than they did for Tyrann Mathieu. So we'll see how that plays out. I think they're fine if they don't get Jarvis Landry, but I think he would be a terrific addition for a lot of reasons. I have a lot of respect for how he plays, how he carries himself, passion he plays with. I think he'd fit in perfectly in the Saints locker room. And I think the Saints think that too. So it's just a matter of, can they come to an agreement on value? That's always a big thing in this stage of a player's career.
Right. And that was my follow-up on the Jarvis question, which is what do you think his other best option is?
Well, I mean, look, he's going to have a lot of options, especially after the draft. A lot of these veteran players like Landry, like Mathieu, they wait till after the draft. Their representation, their agents prefer that, because then you have a team that didn't address a need in the draft, and then you actually have a little more value to the signing. And I don't think really the selection of Chris Olave has any influence at all on Jarvis Landry, because they're completely different style players, different skill sets. I know the Saints, they like to have receivers that, they're like a basketball team. They want guys with different skill sets and different positions, if you will. And Olave is a completely different player. So I would love to see him get Landry. I think this team, I wrote my column this weekend about how I think the Saints believe and are confident that they're much better than the outside world does. Right. And I think it's pretty fascinating right now, because I think most locally the fan base is ecstatic about how things have gone this offseason, but no one outside of New Orleans feels that way. I mean, the over-under in Vegas is 7.5 wins. I mean, that's a losing season. I don't think anybody feels that the Saints are going to be a losing team this year.
No. And I'll ask you the same question that I asked our Straight Up Saints podcaster who works for the Spun and is really just talented with his Twitter reports and updates on the Saints and his analysis on the draft and things like that. His name's Chris Roseviglu. And I asked him the question because, you mentioned the basketball team analogy. Well, last year obviously wasn't that way, right? In the past,
Right.
we like to have a lot of talent at receiver, and with Michael Thomas out and some injuries, and I would say Marquez Callaway not really living up to the preseason hype that was engaged at the start of the season. Jameis Winston's in shotgun, 4 wide receiver set as of right now. No Jarvis Landry. Who is where?
Well, I think 4 receivers, obviously Mike Thomas, probably be in the slot with Olave outside, Callaway, Traquan Smith would probably be the other outside receiver, and I'd have Deontay Hardy in the slot as well.
Deontay Harris.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so either Callaway and Traquan on the other side, opposite of Olave, with Mike Thomas and Deontay in the slot. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good.
That was his answer, pretty much.
No, it's a good group, and I think we all tend to get caught up in, more, right? We got to get new guys. I mean, I think you forget sometimes they're going to have a new receiving coach coming in that could develop some of these these are still young guys, Callaway, Jawan Johnson, of course, has moved to tight end, but I mean, there's still young developmental players that can emerge. They're never going to be Mike Thomas. They're not going to be a wide receiver 1, but they can be contributors. I mean, people forget, like Lance Moore didn't come into the league and start catching 80 balls. I mean, it took him years to develop as an undrafted free agent out of Toledo. I could see guys like that kind of having that same kind of course.
Final thought for you, Jeff, is, read one of your columns on NOLA.com and just kind of want you to be able to kind of put it in your own words here on the podcast. And that is just Dennis Allen, first year as head coach. You talked about how the way that a coach kind of handles his first draft is a good sign of how he is going to perform as a coach in general. And, you used the word fascinating, that his first draft or the Saints' first draft in the Dennis Allen era has been fascinating so far to watch. Some of the bold moves that were made, obviously trading up to get Olave, and all the talent that we've brought in at linebacker, at cornerback, Alante Taylor, and obviously getting our guy in Trevor Penning, who just looks like, I've been watching highlights. I mean, wow, he's a scary man, to say the least. Just talk about what makes it so fascinating for Dennis Allen's first team.
Well, I think he shed his defensive coordinator wings. He stepped into the head coach's role and drafted 2 offensive players in the first round. And I can tell you, I mean, behind the scenes, behind closed doors, there was a lot of push to take. What's the big defensive tackle's name out of Georgia? I'm blanking his name now. The big nose tackle. Anyway, long story short, there was a big push by Ryan Nielsen, by the defensive coaches, to take a defensive lineman. And Dennis Allen listened to his offensive staff. He recognized they need offensive help. That's what's best for the team, and ended up going with Olave, trading up to get the best receiver left. I don't think they really wanted to trade up for Olave, but I think they knew that they needed it. The offensive coaching staff was pushing for it. So he listened to his staff. As a defensive background, a guy with a defensive mindset, he listened to his offensive staff and did what was best for them and kind of threw them a bone by bringing in Olave. I thought that was important. I thought it was fascinating that he chose to do that. And obviously went and got Trevor Penning at the critical position at left tackle. So I think that to me was interesting, that he had the onions to do that as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Are you talking about Travon Walker?
No. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. I've only written about him 100 times. A big defensive.
Jordan Davis.
Yes, Jordan Davis. Thank you,
okay.
Jack.
I was saying Travon Walker, but I forgot that when I take myself off the screen to blow you up, you couldn't hear me. So I was like Travon Walker, and then you didn't say anything. So
yeah,
Jordan Davis went. Let's see, round 1, pick 13 to the. Let me see here. Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah. Right.
And can you imagine lining him up next to David Onyemata and then flanked by Davenport and Cam Jordan? I mean, that would be a pretty imposing front line, and that's what the Saints were thinking. Let's draft into his strength. We're already dominant up front. Let's even get more dominant. There's a philosophy of that. I mean, I think even Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen talked about that, but they didn't do it. He listened to his offensive staff. And so that to me was interesting. It shows, I think, some maturation as a head coach moving into the head coach's role from defensive coordinator when he knew, I'm sure, Jordan Davis is going to be a big time player. And Dennis Allen himself really liked Jordan Davis, loved him, but yet he did the right thing for his team, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no doubt. And Jeff, to give Saints fans an idea of, and even, I guess journalists, podcasters, those who kind of look at the Saints from the outside looking in, and for your kind of long-term experience on covering the Saints, and particularly its coaches, what is it going to be like for the first year of Dennis Allen? And I'm asking from the dynamic of working with offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael and the rest of the offensive staff.
Well, I think that experience he had in Denver will help in that area. And I think also the fact that he and Pete have worked together so long is going to make it a seamless transition. I mean, Pete Carmichael wanted to take a lesser role on the staff this year. I mean, he envisioned himself kind of taking a step back. And when they didn't really find another coordinator prospect that they really fell in love with, that they thought was the ideal fit with the staff, they went back to Pete, and he stepped back into the OC role. And so I think that trust that they each have in each other, they had to have a little trust there to go through that, I think is going to speak well for their relationship going forward. I mean, they're basically going to turn the offense over to Pete, and that hadn't been the case. He's always been under Sean Payton in the past. So I'm really eager to see how Pete kind of blossoms without Sean Payton, looking over his shoulder or being joined at the hip with him, and see in particular, Jack, how he handles Jameis Winston. I think that's going to be one of the more fascinating storylines this season is how Winston performs. He's got Mike Thomas back. He's got some help now with Olave. He's got a few more weapons. And, I know his offensive line is still a little bit of a work in progress at left tackle. But Winston, assume he comes back healthy, will they, open this thing up for him? Or will they say, you know what, we don't need to take chances still. We've got this top 5 defense. Let's just keep playing the way we've been playing and been successful.
I want to call back a graphic to close out here, Jeff, and that is the final 4 teams of last year's NFL playoffs. And that is, looking on the screen, obviously the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Rams, and the 49ers, with 10 LSU players a part of that. Who do you think has the best hair out of that group? Honey Badger or Jamar Chase?
Man, I'm going with Honey Badger. I mean, he's the OG. He's the OG. I mean, look, he's the best college player I think I've ever covered. When he was at LSU, I've never seen a guy make more plays in more different ways than he did. Yeah. He's a dynamic personality, just the kind of player that other players gravitate toward. I love that he wasn't highly recruited, so he always kind of had that chip on his shoulder. As a matter of fact, I wrote a column back in the day in the Times-Picayune saying the Saints should draft him back when he came out of LSU. I thought he was the perfect fit for them.
I might need you to send me a copy of that one.
Yeah, of course they didn't listen to me, Jack, as usual. But I definitely thought he was a Saints kind of player, and I think this is going to be, to use that same word we've been using, fascinating to watch how he fits into the secondary. Because I think the defensive line and the secondary both are elite level groups. really deep, talented, a lot of versatility there. Even if they have some injuries, which they're gonna, that's part of the league. There's so much depth there, especially along the defensive line, that this team, I think, has a chance to really make its mark. I think they have the potential to be the best defense they've ever had here, maybe going back to the Dome Patrol days.
That's exciting to hear. That hair question, of course, was brought to us by H2O Salon and Spa. Could be a great gift for your mother as we look ahead to Mother's Day. Go get her gift card, a nice salon and spa treatment. But Jeff Duncan joins the show. Thanks a bunch, Jeff. And that graphic I showed had obviously the Rams, the Bengals, and the 49ers. Who do you like best out of those three teams to make a run at another Super Bowl in the Rams case, another Super Bowl appearance in the Bengals case, or I obviously don't think the 49ers are going to have the same year they had last year, but just I'll leave that final question for you.
No, actually, I beg to differ with you. I like the Niners a lot.
Okay.
I think they had a lot of injuries last year. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Garoppolo and Trey Lance, how that goes forward. But I've got a lot of respect for their coaching staff, Kyle Shanahan. I mean, they pushed the Rams last year. I mean, we all know they beat the Rams. Cost the Saints a chance to get in the playoffs. I think they very much are going to be in the mix. They remind me a lot of the Saints and how they operate.
Yeah.
Sometimes you look at their roster and you're like, oh, well, it's not that sexy, but they just know how to win, and they're mentally tough like the Saints. I wouldn't be surprised to see those teams meet up in the playoffs down the road.
Jeff Duncan likes the 49ers going far again this year. And
my favorite team, though, I'm telling you, don't sleep on them, Jack. The Cowboys.
Okay.
I think no one's talking about the Cowboys. They won 12 games last year. I know they had a kind of a rude exit, losing at home to the Niners. I think they're extremely talented. I think they're going to be a team to reckon with.
A good friend of mine works for the Cowboys, and so we have a little hatred going back and forth. But I told him, look, I'll root for the Cowboys as long as A, they're not playing for the Saints, and B, as long as Sean Payton is never the head coach of the Cowboys. So we'll agree to disagree there. But no, I agree with you. I think the Cowboys could make another run. The question is, can they finish? Can they win in the playoffs? And that's been their Achilles heel over the past couple of years. So Jeff Duncan, thanks so much, my friend. We'll talk again soon, and keep talking a lot of sports and keep writing great things. I look forward to hearing more about your book with Steve Gleason and all of your other good work, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
Godspeed. All right, folks, this is Talk Culotta, where we talk a lot of sports. We're going to be coming back tomorrow to talk a little rugby, and we have a lot more in store for this week. We're going to go catch Jazz Fest. We are going to cover some Saints training camp, and look out for Boot Crew Media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Our boy John Hendricks will be reporting. Brought to you by Royal Honda, and just a lot of awesome things happening. It was great to have Jeff on the show and keep talking a lot of sports. This is Talk Culotta. I'm Jack, and I am signing out. Peace and love.